And we're live with the last weekend or last week of our virtual eTourism Summit. I want to thank all of you for continuing to join us. I want to thank all of our partners that have that made this a very exciting, successful, dynamic event in a crazy year for the tourism industry. I especially want to thank all of our sponsors that have made this possible. Certainly, Miles Partnership has been an extraordinary partner of eTourism Summit for many, many, many years. Year over year, it's been a huge piece of bringing the smartest and the best minds in tourism marketing to help our industry grow. This year is absolutely no exception. I'm excited about today's conversation. It has been a recurring theme over the last 20 or so days, talking about measuring success and how are we going to do that moving forward. So Gray, thank you again so much to you and the entire team at Miles Partnership, and thanks to all of our panelists for joining us. And I'll hand over the podium to you, Gray.
Perfect. Hello, everyone, and good morning for those on the West Coast. Good afternoon for those on the East Coast like me. I am Gray Lowry. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Insights with Miles Partnership. We are a full-service marketing agency consultancy working with over 90 destinations and destination resorts around the world. In my role, I spend much of my time discussing media performance and how to measure media, ultimately evaluating who the best measurement provider is for an individual client, an individual campaign. And I get to ask questions like scale of data, matching techniques, what are the match rates on those? How do you deliver the data, as well as many more. This is essentially a full-time job for me. And I wanted to get some of the best and brightest in this sector in one room, metaphorically, based on the current times, to speak to their current service offerings and answer some of the tough questions for us all here. I do want to note there are some vendors that play in this space, typically solely focused on travel, that I don't have here today. Vendors like Sojourn and Expedia, based on time and already having 6 participants, had to do some sort of limits. We do have a wide range of participants and vendors here, looking at different transactional data, different geolocational data, and looking at things partnered with media, different platforms, as well as others. I also have Frank Vertoli here from Net Conversions, who is another conversion-focused agency, to help me with my tasks, talk a little bit about how they use vendors like this to measure their campaigns and the campaigns that they're running, so that I'm not the only one asking all the questions or providing my input. And with that being said, we are on a very tight timeline today. So we have a lot of content, and let's get started and introduce our guests. So we have David with Epsilon. We have Jason with Uber Media. We have Timony with Arrivalist. We have Ethan with Visa. We have Frank, who I've introduced, as well as Piyush with Adora. That is the order that they're going to chat with you all today. We have about 4 to 5 minutes of individual presentations to kind of highlight their services and offerings, or how they view the data world. And then we're going to get into some questions that I've prepared, as well as take questions from the audience to get the answers that you guys want from these different vendors and from these different platforms. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to David to talk a little bit about his platform and his offerings.
Thank you so much, Gray, and thanks eTourism for having me again this week. The task was to just quickly share who we are, what we do. So the first thing, to keep it simply, is Epsilon is a strategic partner to help clients drive business outcomes. These outcomes vary by vertical, but focus on incremental return on ad spend for retail, bookings and ROI for travel brands, in-store purchases for CPG clients, and direct ROI for tourism. We provide a holistic approach for destinations to engage their past visitors to maintain share of vacation, engage hand raisers or travel intenders, and then acquire new visitors that have the propensity to drive higher yield. Now, a little bit different from other panelists today is the single most important piece of any of our strategies is the utilization of our core ID. We see at Epsilon 200 million Americans reconciled across all of their devices, addresses, and emails, and verified by actual purchases. I recorded a session you can watch on demand via Tourism last week that dives into identity in detail. So please take some time to watch it or reach out, and I'm happy to dive deeper. But at the end, it doesn't really matter what system or company you work with for measurement. if the data you input is partial or flawed. The most important things are maintaining a bulletproof, verifiable, robust, and persistent identity graph, coupled with the ability to constantly tie together online and offline engagement and transaction activity to individuals at scale. The majority of our clients and other verticals match their first-party data to our core IDs, but for tourism, DMOs do not have transactional data from the thousands of businesses within their destinations. So as a proxy, we compiled a multi-source data set that is proprietary to us that is appended to these 200 million profiles, which represent about 60% of all non-cash transactions in the US. We use this data coupled with our IDs to create custom destination-specific cohorts of individuals, not just audiences. We look at the core IDs that we see transact in your destination over the last 2 years. We suppress residents of your destination because we know the anonymized addresses tied to these IDs. We then are left with visitor spend. We segment these users based on propensity to spend more and message them to drive repeat visitation, model them to find additional individuals that look like highest yielding. So it's moving beyond just traditional demos like moms, 25, 54, household income 100K, to find the right moms or the right people that will drive the most revenue for your destination. We then serve these individuals digital media. We're a digital media company, and track their spend when they arrive in destination. A person was messaged, and we see that anonymous user ABC123 showed up, and we measure exactly what they spent in market for true closed loop measurement, proving direct DMO investment and return with a business outcome, just like our clients like Marriott, Disney, Walgreens, and others. This is important as we move into 2021 and beyond, because when locals and stakeholders question tourism marketing efforts, isn't that they do not believe tourists are arriving. It is more around, what did your organization directly do with the budget you had to invest at drive an outcome? What was that unmodeled ROI for your marketing efforts? Now we can prove it. We can prove actual investment return. Now, as things change, I also talked last week about third-party cookie PK and how to reconcile identity. But a stable cross-device identity is crucial to reaching the right visitors. As cookies continue to crumble, there are a few questions you should ask potential partners. One, are they talking in terms of unique people or cookies? A good check is comparing a universe against the actual population. If there are more profiles than people, then you're probably talking about cookie-based and not reconciled to a real person. How is that data passed to a programmatic vendor? Is it via cookie? What are the match rates, like Gray mentioned? What's your scale limitations? Does this support, as a destination, my mandated goal, of an organizational goal of moving more people to my destination, or as we transition from destination marketing to more management? And then something I like to mention is, how do you measure iOS devices and operating systems? A lot of times we operate with a lot of other measurement vendors. We place pixels on creative. There's some limitations to how you do that. So ask them, how are you measuring in-app conversions? How are you working on iOS, knowing that your iOS operating systems got rid of third-party cookies back in 2017. So finally, I know I'm getting close on time, but to wrap up, Epsilon, though we are very happy and excited to be part of the measurement vendor panel, we do measure media, but at our core, we are a people-based outcome engine that helps DMOs unlock additional economic value for their communities. I look forward to the discussion today. I encourage you all to watch our presentation from last week, and I'll post a new ebook we published on the chat about transition from destination marketing to management. So thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, David. We're going to go to Jason now to talk a little bit about Uber Media's methodology and how they measure campaigns.
Awesome, thanks. As Gray mentioned, I'm Jason Ayers with Uber Media, and I'll give you guys a quick overview of our platform, who we are, and then a specific example of how we worked with a large city down in Texas to help them promote tourism, both pre-COVID and now in a post-COVID world. So Uber Media has been around since 2010, and actually I joined the company in 2011, and when I joined, we were primarily a mobile app publisher. So that's really at the core of our DNA, is understanding the mobile in-app environment and all of the data that you can collect, that you can share as a mobile app publisher, all the challenges that have come with some of the changes in market that David mentioned, and how we've overcome those. So fast forward now to 2020, and we're much more than just a mobile app publisher. We have our own purpose-built from the ground up mobile DSP that is specifically built for targeting ads in an in-app environment, as well as an entire suite of tools where our data, all the mobile data that we're using and collecting, can be used for research purposes and other purposes other than advertising, which would include measuring the foot traffic driven by media that you purchase either through us or through other third parties. We collect this data from a myriad of locations, and David pointed out a very good point that it's all about the accuracy and scale. So in truth, about 90% of all the data we originally observe, we throw out. It doesn't pass our standards, but we're still left with a huge amount of data that we can use for tourism marketers to help them accomplish their business goals. So we're seeing about 250 million unique devices in the US every month. And on average, we're seeing each one of those devices about 500 times a month. There's three key things that we work with tourism marketers on. One is taking all of this data, which when coupled with the 1.5 million precise in-house, we drew them polygons or geofences or shape files in our platform. And these would be retail locations, hotels, attractions, specific points of interest within and throughout the US. We take all this location data we're collecting, we marry it with those precise polygons, and we're able to create some really custom audiences based off the type of traveler you're trying to market to, whether it's a luxury traveler, and in that case, we may look at the types of hotels that they stay in, or if it's a more budget-oriented traveler, and so that you can tailor your marketing messages to those specific audience segments. And then we also do visit measurement. As I mentioned earlier, when we have our own mobile DSP, and when you run advertising campaigns with us, we include that visit measurement as part of the media plan. It's not an additional fee. We do have a small additional fee if you want us to measure other media that you're running in other markets. And we can also measure not only digital media, but out of home. So we have a lot of shape files around a lot of out of home placements that are already out there in the world. And so we're able to actually measure the effectiveness of those billboards or those other out of home placements at driving tourists to your target locations. But let me jump into a specific example, and I'm going to refer to some notes here if you see me looking up and down, just so I get all the numbers right. So we ran a campaign for a large city in Texas last fall and into the spring. We took about 20 different pixels from them, which was spread across various platforms and different publishers and whatnot. And then we did breakouts by tactic, by placement, by publisher type, so that they could really dive into how effective was each marketing channel at driving visits. Then we created two separate audiences. One audience really was focused on drive market customers, and one was those that would be flying in. Overall, we ran 54 million ad impressions over a 6-month period, and we observed 204,000 visits to that one city and to various POIs throughout that city. And that was from 106,000 unique visitors. They were happy enough with it that they've actually renewed and are starting to run that again. I think it's going to launch in like a week. So looking forward to the rest of the panel, learning from some of my other colleagues and some of you guys' questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Timony, you are up.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Timony from Arrivalist, and here are 4 things I'd like you to know, if you don't know already, about our company. We are a location-based data company, SaaS company, and we provide measurement services as well as visitation and research. 4 things to know. 1, much of who we are has been actually defined by those who are in the audience today. We're organic to travel in the sense that your use cases and demands as DMOs have shaped what our product is today. We're perpetually balanced in the sense that our visitation data, our data scientists are constantly balancing that. Balance is an action verb, and our lift studies are, by their very definition, balanced. We are proving incrementality showing how your media moves the needle in performance beyond the control baseline. And last, we have been pioneering for years cookie-free and pixel-free tracking in new media. So we live and breathe tourism. We've worked with 4 out of 5 US states and many of the largest city destinations. And again, you define what we do. We also work with industry associations who trust us. We are an independent third-party measurement partner. We are panel-based. We have 120 million US devices, adults here domestically. And our methodology is such that we employ various filters so that we're always reporting to you the highest quality trip data. When someone meets those criteria for a trip, then they can be reported back to you. And we give that to you on demand with frequent updates. Now, we are no stranger to exogenous shock to the panel. So again, balance is an action verb. When there is a shock, we absorb that and we recalibrate. When it comes to attribution, our core product is the lift study. It's employing multi-touch attribution so we can understand all the touch points, both owned and paid, along the path to arrival from that very first impression. We form 2 groups of cohorts, those who are exposed to ads, that's the target group, as well as those who are unexposed. They're precisely the same size and they're balanced down to the zip code level. Our insights, like our model, are also multidimensional in the sense we're answering these fundamental questions about who the visitor is and how they behave. So where are they coming from? Are they arriving during peak season? Which kind of days? Are they weekend visitors, weekday visitors? How long are they staying in unique days and down to the minute? Where are they going in your destination, to state, county, DMA, city level? What media were they exposed to that may give us some clues as to what influenced them to make the trip? And how well is your media performing? The class's kind of conundrum is volume versus yield. This is a visualization of a South Florida client. On the left, you see where the visitors are coming from in terms of volume and how long those visitors are staying there on the right. And several years back, we came to the realization that providing efficiency and volume metrics, though we do have this massive scale, was not quite enough. That's because you as clients were receiving these questions. Why do you, oops, looks like my slide deck went away. If you can pull that up again, Becca. But getting those questions, why should you market? We have a strong brand, we have strong destination assets. Why should we entrust you with these tax dollars? So this is a tool in the quiver to say, we are moving the needle. So that's what incrementality is all about. We have 2 core KPIs. Arrival lift is showing how media by source, medium, campaign, any permutation of those fields drove incremental visitation in terms of volume compared to that balanced control group. If you're more interested in yield or sustainability, we can show you whether your media was associated with a longer length of stay and exactly how long that length of stay was, to answer questions like, did my creative inspire people to explore more in the destination? So 2 very different ways, but both balanced, both showing incremental impact. The topic here is demystified reporting. What we provide clients is available on demand in an interface with dozens of reports. Everything is downloadable, so we do demystify the data in the sense that you can see the cohorts, the level of cohorts we're tracking, and what those results were at any given time. So we're transparent and we're accessible. And last, we've been pioneering for some time that cookieless and pixelless tracking. We've been measuring connected TV and linear TV for years. Just recently with digital out of home, we announced a partnership with Clear Channel Outdoor, so we can link that as well. So in this age where everyone has some anxiety about what's next, whether it's iOS 14 or CCPA, we're constantly outpacing those innovations and innovating ourselves, connecting the dots. We think there's an abundance of identifiers that can be used to continue tracking effectively all the way to destination arrival. We have a vehicular panel that launched recently, and we have clients who are actually using zip code level road trip data to validate some of their social media decisions. So we offer visitation, road trips, all beyond our attribution scope so that everything is holistic. So in summary, we're organic to travel. It's all based on your use cases as DMOs and travel marketers. We're perpetually balancing both our visitation panel as well as our attribution product, the lift study. We'll show not only how well your campaign performed overall, but whether it moved the needle against a controlled baseline. And we will hold your hand to this new era of pixelless and cookieless tracking on new media.
Thank you. Next, we have Ethan from Visa talking about some of their new measurement products.
Great. Thank you, Gray. Thanks to the eTourism folks for putting this together and having us today. It's been definitely very enlightening hearing from some of my colleagues, and I hope to return that favor to the audience as well. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about who we are. We operate the world's largest payment processing network. And to give you an idea of how large our network is, last year we processed about $4 trillion in online and offline commerce. We have about 900 million debit and credit cards in the US alone. And about 85% of US adults have a Visa card of some type in their wallet. And there's really a reason for that. There are very few brands that have more brand equity than Visa does. We're trusted by merchants, we're trusted by financial institutions, and most importantly, we're trusted by consumers. And that's why we really are the best way to pay and be paid for everyone everywhere. Now, the impact for you as an advertiser, both DMOs and other non-DMO advertisers, is that whether you're partnering with us on digital ad measurement or digital audience targeting, you can have a high degree of confidence that you have the broadest view into a consumer's wallet across different verticals. So moving into ad measurement more specifically to the DMO use case, location data is a really fantastic asset, especially for advertisers, where if we understand someone's location, we can really assume that that conversion happened. But for destination marketers, it's really important, I think, to remind ourselves that we're not just selling places, selling locations at a high abstract level, but we're really marketing on behalf of people and on behalf of businesses. And so a solution should be able to answer the question, how did my media budget drive investment in my market, and where specifically did that happen? So Visa Ad Measurement is available in two outputs. It's available as a dynamic interactive dashboard, which is what you're looking at on the screen right now, for clients who want to put this in front of their clients, in front of their tourism boards, to help them understand holistically how their campaign performed. But this information is also available as a raw data output for maybe a more mature advertiser who wants to use our data set as a measurement engine, as a tool that can power other decks and other analyses that they're putting together. So we report on pretty standard things at first glance: ROAS, conversion rate, new customer acquisition rate, but there are a few things that I want to call out specifically. The first is how your campaign performed by tactic. So whether you're serving impressions based off retargeting, contextual targeting, demo targeting, if you're serving impressions in different markets. This dashboard is going to tell you how those specific tactics drove sales, how they drove new purchasers, what the average ticket size was. And then the second thing I want to call out is how we can report on your campaign's performance by vertical. So not only are we answering the question that, where did my ad campaign drive sales, but in what verticals did my campaign drive sales? So we're drilling down into QSRs, into restaurants, into retail, into in-market travel, to give you a sort of 360-degree view of how your campaign is performing. Over to the right side, we can tell you, when purchases are performing and when purchases are occurring in the market. And keep in mind, this is an interactive dashboard. So when you hover over a tactic, when you hover over any certain bar, it's going to drill down into that tactic and give you all of those metrics. So in sum, Gray, thanks for having me today, and to Becca and team for putting this together. And I will turn it over to the next panelist.
Perfect. Next, we have Frank talk a little bit about net conversions and exactly kind of how they use this data to help some of their clients.
Unmuted. There we go. Unmuted. Thanks, everyone. Reoccurring trend, I hear, which is good. Media and measurement, kind of the consideration. So thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I don't know if you realize it or think of it this way, but you are definitely fighters and leaders of the travel industry, and that you're fighting through COVID and webinar fatigue, which is a real thing. So thanks, everyone, for attending. Will, Becca, Connect, fellow panelists, and definitely all you attendees trying to get people traveling again. Just, I'm going to share just a couple points today that I want to stick with you. I've got some slides. I was actually going to do all memes because that's a trend now. PowerPoint's always been getting a bad rap, but memes are taking over the world. But I didn't. I did a few slides and just want to really hopefully impart two things on you that you take away. One, if in a perfect world, remember net conversion, or Frank. And two, more importantly, think about measurement as a framework and a plan during initial campaign planning. And so very quickly about net conversion, many of you might not have heard of us. We are a boutique agency, but we specialize in travel and tourism. And it's really, we're an analytics company that does online media. And most importantly, it's insights to impact on our client and destination business. Last year, we managed about 150 million in media and helped track that to over $1 billion in economic impact, direct travel bookings, as well as other verticals we might be in now. And definitely recognized among our peers, among our long-term partnerships, as a great partner in this area, as well as many of our panelists today kind of deliver these same things, which is exciting. We only do two things though: media and analytics, that reoccurring trend I had mentioned. I won't go into these. The deck is available as a download after the fact. But all we do is media and analytics. We don't do content or development of platforms or websites. Media is online, offline, everything in between that is evolved. And measurement isn't just the media, but it's that overall impact to the business, whether that's your first party data, third party data through a lot of our great partners today, and it's an evolving space. So just those two things, media and measurement. And really what I want to convey is we spend all this time setting up campaigns as destinations or agencies or partners. We talk about audience and we talk about channels and we talk about creative. But what I want to encourage is thinking about measurement as a framework that you consider at the very beginning when you're setting up your campaign. You kind of see here an example of framework thought. There's engagement, there's consideration, there's actual sales. And there's different things you can track in each of those areas. But when you're setting up your campaign by looking at what reports will be available, also what you have in your first party data, what's available through the ad partners themselves, third party services you might subscribe to, no shortage of data. But by thinking of it in advance and setting up a framework, you give yourself the best opportunity to maximize your chance to optimize, get the performance out of a campaign, optimize, and get the best return possible on overall impact. So I'm going to show an example here. This is, for example, a measurement plan on an annual campaign. You kind of see, call it 2021, but that starts in December and runs all the way to the end of next year. You kind of see what you'll get, media and web metrics, and those will be in some kind of weekly dashboard. That's what we used to show in presentations. Like, hey, here's a sample of the dashboard you would see, but it's much more important than that. There's the dashboard, all the KPIs you'll get from reporting, but then you can also layer in, say, a brand tracker where you're watching Google search trends over time to improve. You'll also look at a survey you might execute. You'll look at third-party data you might get from your partners. Arrivalist, Adora, Sojourn were mentioned. There's lots of sources. And there could also be modeling. This is where you get more advanced into attribution modeling or using other kind of analysis that data team you might have access to directly in-house or through partners. And by planning these in advance, you'll know that you'll have an opportunity to optimize and pivot throughout the course of a campaign. And that's really where you hit your targets or exceed expectations, is by planning that in advance, modeling, and then implementing over time. So really, what I encourage you is to remember to do a measurement plan. It's part of that initial campaign setup. What are we going to measure and how? It's not an afterthought like, hey, we got these reports from our providers or from our analysis team or our website or our call center. Think about those in advance and how you'll use those in an ongoing basis to optimize and get the most out of your campaign. So with that, I said I wouldn't use memes. These are animated in a different version, but the two things that, if you remember, net conversion is Will Ferrell thinks it's awesome fun, but we are subject matter experts and good partners. And then two, the dog falls short. A lot funnier when it's animated, but don't fall short of your opportunity with the campaign. Set up that measurement plan and framework in advance so you optimize and definitely hit that goal. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Greg.
Perfect. And we have our final panelist, Piyush, talk a little bit about Adora and what they're doing in the measurement space.
Thank you, Gray and eTourism, for giving us this opportunity. And thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar today. It's a great opportunity for me as a person as well to learn from all the fantastic panelists over here. And let me give you a brief overview of what we have been working at Adora. But before I begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Piyush Srivastava. I'm a Vice President of Product Management at Adora. And my background has been in data science. So over the last 15 years, I've been working on a variety of use cases, specifically for machine learning and AI. I see the list of attendees, and it's a pleasure to work with a lot of you who have joined this webinar. With that said, what I want to start out with is, before I talk about what we have been working at Adora, I want to start with this slide. And this is a view of how we see industry evolving. And there's no debate about this. 2020 and beyond will look nothing like what 2019 looks like. And this pandemic, of course, which all of us are dealing with, and I really hope that things improve soon. But beyond pandemic, there are broader industry trends which are going on. To start out with, a lot of regulatory changes which are happening in the landscape of data privacy and consumer consent. We had GDPR, we had CCPA, but those are kind of old news now. And as a matter of fact, even at this moment of time, at least 4 US states, Nebraska, Virginia, Washington, and New York, everyone is contemplating some form of a bill to continue to provide the privacy for the consumers. The second thing that, of course, we have talked about in this session as well is the cookieless movement, right? The announcement from Chrome earlier this year, as well as the announcement from iOS, from Apple about the iOS, about IDFA. All those things are drastically changing and evolving the way we think about marketing, not just for tourism, but broader for the travel industry as well. And last but not least, the global events which are happening, right? The pandemic which is happening. And we all know that travel is, 80% down compared to last year right now. And as a result of it, the fact is that the pandemic, with the first wave, second wave, and the third wave, you just don't know where to run your marketing campaigns. What are the feeder markets? Where do you need to focus? If you are a DMO and you're trying to bring visitation, you just have to play the guessing game to know where you can attract the visitors from. So that's how we at Adora see the 3 main challenges in terms of marketing industry. And to address that, we have been working on a technology, we call it Cortex. And the entire premise of the Cortex is based on what we as a company are at the core. So Adora at the core is a data company. We have really verified transactions within our system. And the transactions that we have in our system is coming in from roughly 300 data partners that we work globally. And the entire data set that we have collected, it's comprised of roughly 1 billion identities, as you can see on my screen. Rather than going through the details over here, I'll share these slides later on. But the point being that at Adora, we work with a significantly large data set, and the data set is broader in nature, not just in terms of global, but also in terms of what kind of partners we work with. So we work with travel, finance, e-commerce, real estate, experiential, and so on and so forth. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to build our Adora privacy tokens. And Adora privacy token is our privacy-first digital identity recognition. And what I mean by that is, if you imagine, any consumer, when they're interacting with all of the publishers online, it's not one single identity that you use. For example, if I go to social media, I might have one identity, versus if I go to Marriott.com to book my flight, to book my hotel, I might have a different identity. The privacy token that Adora has been building on allows you to connect all those different identities together in a privacy-safe environment. And what I mean by privacy-safe environment is that we take privacy, consumer compliance, and consent very religiously, and we make sure that the technology that we build has those things as a key pillar at the foundation. And with the privacy tokens that we have been working on, we are able to provide our customers, before I jump into the solution, how does the privacy token works, right? So this is a fictitious example of a consumer who starts out the day with booking a flight to Hawaii, then does a ride share, then checks the email, and so on and so forth, goes about the day. And if you look at each one of these are different digital interactions that consumer is having. And these interactions are not on one single publisher. These interactions are on your broad internet, right? The privacy token that we have been working on, the ID graph that we have been working on, allows us to connect all these different digital interactions in a cookie-less environment and in a privacy and consent compliant environment to provide our customers, to all the DMOs, with a very rich data set made up of 1 billion identities, which allows you to understand who are the travelers, where are they coming from, what is the intent for travel, and so on and so forth, so that you can target them and measure the accuracy of your campaigns. This leads to the solution. As you can see on my screen, there are three main solutions that we provide. Number one is personalization. So making sure that our DMO customers, all of you, have access to the state-of-art data sets to personalize your consumer experiences whenever someone comes to your website. We also provide data for omni-channel campaign activation. So if you're running a social campaign, YouTube campaign, video, search, display, what have you, we have direct integrations with a variety of platforms, Adobe, Amobi, DV360, Google Ads, Facebook, and so on, so that the data that we have at Adora, you can have access to it directly on your platform. And last but not least, and the main point of this discussion, is the measurement. The entire platform that we have put together allows you to measure the performance of your campaign on verified transactional data that Adora has in its consortium. So where are they coming from, where are they going, how long they are staying, what is the purpose of travel, and so on and so forth. And the beauty of the measurement solution that we provide to our customers, a lot of you have been using it, is number one, it's unbiased solution. We also have a media business, but we don't bias any of the data. And number two, it's a cross-vendor, cross-channel measurement. So you can use this solution to measure your campaigns across your social, video, display, native, out-of-home, CTV, and so on and so forth. So this gives you one single solution that allows you to understand the performance of all of your campaigns in one single place. And that's what I wanted to present to you. And here's the information on myself. As I mentioned, I'm VP of Product at Adora. Please feel free to reach out to me or to my colleague Bill Obrighter for any information that you have. And as I said, I'll share this deck afterwards with this after this webinar. Back to you, Gray.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So I've put together a list of questions that I'm hoping to ask all of our panelists here. It's rare we have all of these people in one room together, so this is a great opportunity. I also want to open it up to you that are attending today to put some questions into the chat box, ask questions that you may have. Hopefully we can get the answers that you're looking for. And with that, I want to start with Frank. Frank, if as a purveyor and user of all of these different data sources, if you could only use one type of data based on a client's budget, what would it be? Would it be transactional, geolocational, something else, and why? I want to understand, because this is a decision that I have to make quite a bit, and it's always difficult because you can see different sources having different applications.
Yeah, there's no such thing as perfect data or all the data, right? We keep talking of customer 360 and all the touch points. It's growing. There's never been more data available, but the answers aren't in there. We still, as marketers and destinations, have to kind of interpret what we see and make decisions and move forward. But if I had to narrow it down, I would say transactional would be more valuable. I mean, there is a lot of value in the people who shopped but didn't buy, just as much to learn. That's a much bigger cohort than those that do. But I think that transactional looks more like behavioral, and what we're learning as we do have more and more data from all our partners and in our first party data sets as destinations, we're learning more ties us together as behaviors versus male or female or geo origin market. So there are certainly trends, but I think if I had to just go with one, it'd be transactional because it looks more like behavioral. And, you know, in spite of, you know, if we looked at all our transactions, it's a bell curve, but there are very young people giving us a credit card and coming to our destination, as well as people at the opposite end and everyone in between. So understanding what connects them as a group or thought or behavior is probably more value if I had to really narrow it down.
Awesome. I'm going to give the opportunity to Jason to make a counterpoint on that based on his geolocational data, solution.
Yeah, listen, in a previous life, I was a media buyer, just like a lot of you guys. And I want both, right? No doubt. Right? But you question, if you could only have one, I would pick location data for a couple reasons. One, Frank's dead on. We're ultimately after the consumer's behavior or profiling that household as to the type of traveler and the type of attractions and the type of things that they may be interested in when trying to market my destination. And every single person has one of these, and most households have many of them, right? My household, I have 2 kids, but we have like 6 devices, right? And so the amount of data that we're able to collect from the household as a unit is much greater than just the transactional data that, one of the parents is doing when they get to a location. I mean, when you go to a location, this thing, like it or not, is spitting off a lot of location history and a lot of location data, but more so than just your transactions. But
I think that was a great answer. Well said. I'm going to let Piyush answer as well from a transactional standpoint to kind of validate and kind of see the counterpoint as well.
Yeah, so Gray, as I mentioned, my background is in data science. And as a data scientist, I love all data sources. I want to start out by that, right? And I do want to echo what Frank was saying. I think we need to think about the data sources and their applicability in terms of what are the outcomes you are looking for. And specifically, if you are thinking about measurement, then within measurement, what exactly is the outcome of your campaign, right? For example, if you're running a Facebook campaign might be top of the funnel awareness, and that might not lead to visitation. And if that's the case, then maybe location data is not the best answer. Versus if you're driving down the funnel and you are really increasing the visitation to your destination, then location data is definitely one of the things you need to think of. The way we think about it at Adora is, I think it boils down to 3 main questions, right? Number one, and this goes to any vendor. You should ask this question to any vendor that you work with. Number one is, what's the accuracy and scale of the data that you are working with? Transactional or geolocation doesn't really matter. Is your data set accurate? And do you have the scale of the data to give me a robust measurement, right? If you have a scale of, let's say, 100, right, and you're extrapolating it to 1 million, then that's not a good data set to have. That's point number one. Point number two is the data set. Is it the data set that you're working with? Is it future-proof? So, as you know, things are changing dramatically, right? The device IDs are going to go away. The cookie tracking is going away. Cross-site is out. Fingerprinting is out. So the data sets that you're using, would that allow you to continue to measure with the same level of precision in the future, right? What you're doing in Q4, can you do the same thing in Q2 and Q3? And last but not least, the data sets that you have, are they compliant, right? With the antitrust laws and with all the regulations that are coming along, you do need to make sure that the vendor that you are working with, the data is compliant and it is digitally rights managed. So that's how we see the world at Adora. And end of the day, as I mentioned, our focus has been on making sure that we provide the solution, be it for marketing or be it for measurement, which is based on verified identities. And verified identities is if someone goes to any kind of a digital platform and does any kind of activity, we know that's a real individual and it's not a fraud. And that's the most important thing, to make sure that the media activity as well as measurement, it's unbiased and it's accurate.
Great answer. I actually had a question come in from Jennifer that correlates to question 5 that I had previously prepared, talking a little bit about GA4. And so I'm going to skip down on that list and ask that question because it's pertinent to the question that just came through. So there have been many discussions, many presentations around intelligent tracking prevention, or ITP, whether it be 1.0 through like 2. I don't even know what they are right now because there's a new 2. something every week, or enhanced tracking protection with Mozilla, or changes to the resettable device IDs available on iOS, Chrome Sandbox, Privacy Sandbox, and really don't want to focus on this area too much. Still, I do want to get some opinions from the group here about the way Google is handling these, specifically as it pertains to how Google is changing their MarTech products to use machine learning to extrapolate performance for those users and devices that they can no longer measure. Piyush kind of just touched on this, right? How do we keep our overall performance somewhat standard as we have devices leaving that measurement pool, right? If in 2019, if I was able to measure, let's say 100 devices based on the tracking protocols in place at that point, and in 2020, I could only measure 75 devices based on the new limitations that Apple has put into place. How do I make up that 25% or those 25 devices? Google's trying to do that in Google Analytics GA4, as well as in Google Campaign Manager, using their ML solutions to basically look at the total amount of devices that were served impressions or visited a web page, and they didn't collect information on, and then extrapolate the performance of similar devices and then back into an overall number for the entirety of the campaign or the entirety of the site using some of their learnings. I want to basically push this out to Frank and see what he thinks of how Google's handling this, and what you guys think about Google Analytics 4, as well as some of the changes that are happening in Google Campaign Manager around estimated conversions and extrapolated conversions around floodlights right now.
Yes. Specific to Google or Facebook or any of these other, I mean, that's the challenge, is that more data is going into these walled gardens than just trust them. They have their own tools, and you could just spend more money within their garden and everything will work out. It's definitely going to be a challenge. We'll go backwards in some areas, as you mentioned, Gray, just the kind of numbers. I used to be able to measure 100, now I can measure 75. What does that mean? I think as a macro trend, without talking about any specific platforms, Google or otherwise, first-party data is going to become more valuable. The days of not getting permission and just getting information from third parties and piecing it together is going to be harder to get that more holistic picture. Like I said earlier, there is no magical 360 customer view where you see and know everything. So what's going to be more important is having more of your audience known to you as first party, still trusting partners to supplement and add to that where you can, whether it's media partners or other channels, and then building that framework to measure within. I just think, first-party data is going to be that much more valuable. Google has first-party data, and a lot of it you're going to pay to access through advertising in their network. Facebook has it, you're going to pay to access there. Other partners have it. It all comes at a cost. So I think the more you recognize and understand your own customers, the better positioned you'll be to take advantage to the best possible in the current scenario for tracking, and in the future as more privacy kind of layers are added to protect consumers. You'll still be able to look in aggregate, and we as mass marketers, even if you have a small boutique destination or hotel, you're still dealing in mass numbers. Now, first-party data lets you say this customer that came to me, but really when you make marketing decisions, it's less about one-to-one, although you can do that through tools, and more about controlling the overall orchestration of where you spend money, how you spend it, and then how you track that destination. So by separating it into individual, your first-party data, and then more aggregate data, you can find your way through and still take the data you are able to get and make decisions that move your business forward as it continues to evolve.
Perfect. Specifically on GA4, based on this question, I think one of the biggest changes to Google Analytics coming through is the shift in focus to user IDs, right? Google has kind of shied away from this in the past. Adobe has been very pro it in the past. In GA4, there's a lot more emphasis on first-party data, as Frank mentioned. I know I've worked with Adora in the past to use their SDK to look at a user coming to the site and provide personalization. I wanted to ask Timony with the Rivalist, actually, and then go to Piyush as to do either of you see opportunities to expand your data sets that you have running on customers' websites to actually provide a hashed user ID into GA for your clients to take advantage of and use from a match perspective? And honestly, if anyone else on the panel wants to answer that question, I think that there's a big opportunity here, as destinations aren't really having a transaction, right? There is no first party transaction in most cases. So how do they populate that field of user ID or that first party user field? And is that a place that you or your organizations look to be moving into to provide an SDK that can help populate that space, and that a destination can take advantage of it and ultimately attach an ID to a user and become more closely integrated with your data sets? Timothy?
Great question. And that actually brings to mind something we did with CCPA, actually, getting ahead of these industry disruptions. A lot of clients, from a legal perspective, they didn't know what that meant for them. We were able to work with them and advise them legally and help them set up user record management. So they were compliant, we were compliant, and we were kind of guiding them through the process. So similarly, yes, I think this is something that we're open to, that we have some skin in the game there, right? If we work with them, we're able to essentially grow our panel and measure more. So very interested in this, with Google Ads Data Hub, the resettable device IDs, the beta that they're doing with LiveRamp, in addition to everything with cookies. We definitely see a lot of opportunity there, and it sounds like something that's mutually beneficial from our perspective as location-based data company, building out our panel and giving our clients more value.
Piyush, happy to have you answer this, and then I did open it up to everyone else, but I'm probably going to move on unless someone really wants to comment on it, based on timing and running out of time.
Sounds good. So let me try to keep it short, Gray. So Gray, as you mentioned, right, we have been working together with Miles Partnership on the SDK that we have rolled out, and the whole premise of the SDK is how do we make sure that DMOs who have this who have the website but there's no transactional data, how do we make sure that we are able to collect some notion of a token, right? Some form of an ID from all the people who come to visit your website and connect it with the consortium that we have with the billion identities. And I think that is going to be the trend in the future as well. To your point, Gray, and Frank, you mentioned it perfectly, right? The fact that walled gardens are becoming more and more walled, right? The walls are becoming higher. I think this trend is going to continue. And the fact is as simple as this. Everyone is struggling with privacy and compliance right now, and everyone is trying to figure out how to make data more secure and reliable. So that's where we see the trend of the industry as a whole. And that's where at Adora, we have been working on the SDK. Gray, we have been working on it together. But more importantly, to answer your second part of the question, we do need to think about a closed loop solution. We do have the walled gardens. We have all of the vendors over here on this panel, and we need to figure out a way that it's a closed loop solution. So for example, at Adora, one of the things we have been working on is the Cortex search application. The whole notion of the search application is you as a DMO have been running a lot of paid search campaign, and we at Adora have a billion identities, which gives you a lot of behavioral data. We have a direct integration with Google Ads, which allows you to get access to the data within Google Ads, run your campaign, come back and measure it with the impact product, and push it back to Google Ads for further campaign optimization, right? So that's the kind of the closed loop solution that I think the industry need to think as a whole, to make sure that the walled gardens have all the capabilities to make sure that DMOs can manage their campaign, but the DMOs are not starving for the quality data that all of the people on this all the people on this panel list brings back to them. So I think that's where the industry is going to evolve.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to try to combine 3 or 4 questions into one massive question right now and get some answers for everyone on things that I find interesting. So I've worked with a lot of you over the last few years, and I know that you all have different pricing models and different sort of either impression minimums or volume. And so I wanted to ask David with Epsilon to take the point of ultimately having campaign minimums and impression minimums in order to get to scale from Epsilon's data set, and then talk to Ethan on the Visa side to talk about how they're not looking at an impression minimum, but are trying to do a one-to-one match. So while you could basically run a campaign with a very small threshold and pay a fixed cost to use their solution, how does that compare to Epsilon's price points in order to access their data solution. And David, while I have you talking about that, can you also speak to whether or not you will offer data unpaired from media in the future, or if that is kind of not on the roadmap at this time, or something you prefer not to talk about?
Yeah, no, the second question is pretty easy. No, we're a media company. So our data is tied to the media, but it's really because of that, we have to have the core ID to make it work. So one of the things that the other panelists were talking about is, what if we have location data plus transactional data? Well, we do. Our core ID sees where you're going. Every bid that we win or lose, we know the location of that person. We know where you're browsing, where you're going, where you're venturing, tied also to transactional data. We just don't have a location-based measurement product. So, and I think from a campaign minimum, if you think about all the pieces we're trying to fragment together, Piyush just mentioned, you're trying to help a closed loop measurement solution. You have to have, you've all rambled off a bunch of different partners, a LiveRamp, a DSP, Google Analytics, Google Display, all these fragmented pieces that add to CPM and cost. For what we do for our campaign minimum is we take all of that into a CPM. We've already done the hard work. So, we offer a minimum for media buys, which is pretty standard for most media companies. But with that, you have a pre-built, pre-made identity solution that scales. We're the second largest digital ad platform in the world, based on our Epsilon private exchange, with stable identities that see everything about you. And from a privacy standpoint, it's already done. We helped write a lot of these policies. And when you opt out on our platform, we opt you out at the individual level. So if you opt out, it's not just that cookie, it's all the cookies, all the devices, everything associated with you, you're opted out with forever. So the notion of these fragments, yes, you can go that route. But what we've done outside the walled garden environment is already built it. So you can take advantage of that at any given time. That's why we do have campaign minimums.
Perfect. Ethan, the counterpoint on no campaign minimums and just measuring, and I think one of the other big differences I want to point out is with David, you're essentially Epsilon, you're measuring the media that you are purchasing, right? Because it is that closed loop solution. But if a client is running something outside of Epsilon, then we're not able to measure that, right? So there's a double-edged sword with that, correct? Like I can perfect measurement for your media, but not on other sources.
We've actually worked through, so if other vendors and partners want to work through how to place our first-party pixel on their site, we do publisher, we could look at measuring things. We do that a lot for other verticals. We work with lots of other providers, lots of other media companies to measure their media as well. In tourism, we haven't found those partnerships yet, but we're not opposed to it. It's just, are other companies willing to allow us to do it? So if anybody's wanting to explore, you have vendors or other companies you work with, we're always happy to have the conversation and work through it to how we would measure that.
So a little bit of a light on the, will you have a data product available potentially in an indirect way, if you would?
It would still be well, yeah, we have to figure that part out, but no, it's the data will always, like when we execute media, our ID is part of that, but we have figured out ways as we run media with us to also measure the efficacy of media with other vendors as well.
Okay. Ethan, I will let you wrap it up, and then we probably have to wrap this whole thing up because we are running out of time. A little too ambitious as always here.
I'll be brief. We think it's all about accessibility. Take COVID for example. There are and smaller DMOs, folks who are looking to travel during this time might be looking to travel locally instead of to faraway locations, and a lot of those clients, find a lot of these minimums exclusionary at times. And like you were just talking with David about, we're a payment processing network. So if we can pixel your media, or if we can pull a log file from your platform, we can measure it. Another reason we're able to make this work is because of the scale of the Visa cardholder network. So if we're looking at, 100 million impression level campaign, it's very easy for us to find a significant level of transactions based on the fact that 85% of US adults have a Visa card in their wallet, and they're using it to pay for things when they're traveling in market. But as you know, Gray, this product is evolving and we're evolving. So we allow clients to partner with us on a one-off basis. And then, for some of our larger DMOs, that subscription model works better for them. That measurement engine approach works better for them. And when they are on this, more of a subscription model, it allows us to understand their tech stack such that we can kick out outputs and reports on a faster basis and make sure that every month advertisers have an idea of how their campaigns are, driving revenue within the market. So back to you.
Well, with 1 minute left, I want to thank everyone for participating today. I know that I could sit here and talk about this for the rest of the day easily. There's so much to, discuss, so many different rabbit holes to go down, but we did have limited time. So I wanted to thank all of you guys for participating. I hope you all found this as enjoyable as I did. And again, thank you all for your time. And I think that's all we have today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gray.